What is wrong with iRobot? Why is it one of those movies that feels more mediocre after rewatching it? Is it the characters, the CGI, the acting? Maybe the story is too boring? Maybe it's because people enjoy other robot movies like Bicentennial Man or Terminator and compare them? I know these two movies aren't in the same genre as iRobot, but they both feature robots as the main hurdle and the main idea behind the movie. And that is what I plan on doing today in this movie review to find out why iRobot feels worse after rewatching it. In case you forgot about iRobot, here's a quick summary. If you don't need it, you can skip ahead using the timestamps I put in the description. The movie takes place in a future Chicago where robots have now become a part of everyday life. I think this movie inspired Detroit Become Human with the way these robots are everywhere. Anyway, we get introduced to our main character, Del Spooner, who is a detective with an unresolved trauma that makes him really hate robots. Just one look at them and he's triggered. After chatting with his grandma, he's on his way to work. As he's happily eating his pie, he sees a robot holding a purse running down the street. He thinks the robot's stealing it. He chases it down, he tackles it, he even points a gun at it, only to find out he's wrong because the robot was getting the purse for a woman that forgot her inhaler. At the police station, Dell is made fun of by his co-workers. He gets a talking to from his boss, then receives a call from US Robotics about the death of a scientist he was friends with named Alfred Lennig, who in this movie is considered the pioneer of robotics and the first person to make robots or like to pave the way for robot development. At the scene of the crime, Spooner has a short, uninteresting conversation with the scientist's hologram before investigating, accompanied by our second human main character of the movie, Susan Calvin, who worked closely with Alfred Lenning. She defends robots with her life, but at least she's not as bad as those people that defend generative AI on Twitter. She believes that robots can do no harm because of the three laws of robotics, which are basically 1. No robot can harm a human or let a human harm itself. 2. No robot can disobey an order unless it conflicts with the first rule. 3. A robot must defend itself unless it conflicts with the first and second rules. Pretty straightforward stuff. She takes Spooner to the doctor's lab, introducing us to an advanced artificial intelligence named Vicky, who was created by Lenning. The lab seems empty at first until a robot jumps out of hiding and out a window to escape. Spooner manages to shoot the robot, causing it to leak. He follows the leak but loses the robot outside. Susan takes Spooner to the factory where they repair robots. They find it, it tries to escape, but it gets captured by the police. At the police station, Spooner tries to interrogate it, but he fails. USR representatives arrive at the police station and take the robot because they plan on decommissioning it. Sometime later, Spooner tries to access some messages between the USR CEO and Lenning, only to get jumped by a bunch of robots, which causes a reveal that he actually has implants. He manages to return home, he speaks with Susan, and he reveals he hates robots because during a car accident, a robot saved him instead of a child because he had a higher chance of survivability than the child. Positive points about this movie. Well, one of the main positives that I like is one of our main characters, Sonny. He's an interesting character with a very innocent feel to him. Or maybe I just like him because he reminds me of C-3PO from Star Wars. The world design in general is pretty good. It's keeping a foot in reality by keeping the cities still recognizable and believable. It's not the sleek, sharp style that we got used to in sci-fi movies. They got a city, like real Chicago, and added a few extra buildings and the robots being everywhere. I like the scene in the lab. It shows us firsthand how agile and powerful the new models are. Speaking of these models, they're called NS5s, and I like the scene where they arrive at the factory. Spooner uses a logical excuse and brings up good points when he gets questions why these robots have like human-like faces. The scene where Spooner confesses why he hates robots is a good scene. It does a good job of showing how Spooner got his trauma. Some would say this is a negative part of the movie because he's a world surrounded by robots and this one incident should make him hate all robots. But trauma doesn't work like that. Trauma doesn't work with logic. The part where people riot against the robots has its moments. The scenes where the cop shoots the robots and the robots chucking people around like ragdolls are nice scenes. I should speak about the CGI in this movie since we're here. It's not that bad. I get why people might say it's kind of creepy. It does look like a bit uncanny at scenes, but in general, I think it's not bad. It's fine. So far, we've covered the good parts of the movie, but that doesn't really answer our question. Why does it feel worse when you rewatch it? Well, maybe when we look at the negatives, we'll understand more. One point is Will Smith's acting for the majority of the movie. The scenes where he's trying to be a serious cop guy is just uninteresting. I won't talk about the jokes in the movie because comedy is subjective. Some people might like them. I personally don't. I think the script could have done a lot more work for Susan's character. She goes from being the biggest defender of robots for a decent chunk of the movie to fighting against them so suddenly. I know she felt emotional when she saw that Spooner cared about the scientists and also when he opened up about his trauma, but I think those two reasons aren't enough. And it's not just her. Everyone in the movie is like this. They call Spooner crazy about he's the only one that is paranoid about robots, only for them to fight against robots the first chance they get when the robots take over. If they genuinely believed that robots would not hurt humans, they would not rebel against the robots that take over the streets. They would probably just brush it off because, again, they believe that humans will never be hurt by robots because of the three laws. I don't like the amount of exposition in the film. I get wanting to explain the new world to your audience, but it should have been toned down a bit. There were a few there were a few characters throughout the movie that ultimately had no significance. That one guy, I don't remember his name, the chief of police, and the USR CEO. They all show up a couple of times, but they serve no purpose throughout the movie. The police chief only shows up to call Spooner crazy and tell him to go home. The CEO tries to stop Spooner, but he ends up just being a bump along the road. Just quick, easy, insignificant. And Spooner's friend, that I don't remember his name. That's how insignificant he is. I genuinely don't remember his name. He also has no role throughout the entire movie. He shows up at the beginning of the movie and at the very end. We literally know nothing about him. The movie serves no consequences to Spooner. He tackles a robot and points a gun at it in broad daylight, and all he gets is a talking to by his boss. So, okay, but then he tries to interrogate Sonny, and the chief, well, initially says no, but then Spooner asks him for 5 minutes twice, and all of a sudden the chief agreed. Why would the chief agree for this? If Spooner is well known throughout the police department that he hates robots, he shouldn't even be near a robot, let alone interrogate it. Also, since we're on the topic of the interrogation, if the chief of police genuinely thinks that robots would never harm humans, why would he place a bunch of armed guards in the interrogation room? Spooner wants to take a look around the scientist's lab, talks bad to the CEO's face, and then he faces no consequences about this. I'd imagine a CEO of a multi-billion-dollar company like this guy would just not let someone like Spooner talk bad to his face and get away with it. Spooner fights an army of robots and saves the day, but then the movie ends. We don't see him checking up on his grandmother or his friends to make sure they're safe. The movie also has this overcomplicated way to leave clues. The first clue is the dead science guy. The first clue is just him being dead, and Spooner has to find out why. Spooner sits on the whole thing for a while until the answer comes to him from his police captain or his police chief. I don't even remember his position. That's crazy. Anyway, the answer comes to him from his police captain, who gave him the idea that Spooner was probably contacted for a reason because of his hatred for robots. How didn't Spooner realize this on his own when he was told that the hologram makes emergency calls to one specific person based on the person's choosing? What I'm basically trying to say is the science guy had Spooner as his emergency contact. And The grandma gives Spooner the third clue, which was about breadcrumbs, and the idea even came to Spooner because she rambled on about food and Spooner's childhood. How didn't Spooner think of this earlier when he found the Hansel and Gretel storybook early in the movie? Like, I get it if he didn't think of it much, if there were like multiple books all in the room, but it was just this one book. At the end of the movie, it was basically revealed that Sonny was behind Dr. Lanning's death, and nobody does anything about it. Nobody's upset. Spooner is somehow okay with it for some reason. They were both friends, so I'd expect that he'd be more emotionally torn up about this. So, what's the verdict? Why do people like iRobot less after rewatching it? Well, the main character being decent, the world looking cool, and the amazing camera work aren't enough reasons to keep people hooked in the movie. The first few clues could have been handled better, the side characters are kinda useless, and Spooner not caring that Sonny killed the doctor is out of character. People don't really like Susan's character as she feels very robotic, more robotic than the actual robot somehow. But what do you think? Do you like this movie? Let me know why or why not in the comments. Next movie review will be about DCEU's Justice League, the theatrical release one anyway. If you have any other suggestions for movies, leave some in the comments, and I shall see you in the next movie review next Monday. Or if you're here for my gaming stuff, then I'll see you here tomorrow. Take care. Have a good one.